All right, guys, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about no contact with families because that's been a really important topic lately with Oprah. People are all talking about it on TikTok. I've been watching videos, just getting ideas about what people are talking about. So we're going to be digging into that today. And I wanted to start off with something that I utilize with a lot of my clients when we're talking about no contact, family issues, and all of that. But I want you to imagine that you're talking to a 6-year-old and the 6-year-old comes up to you and says, "Hey, Dad, I hate you," or "Hey, Mom, I hate you. I want you to move out, and I hate this life." You know, as the adult in that equation, how do you feel? Um,
Not good.
Not good.
Not good.
Not good. Well, and you might not feel really good, but because they're still 6 years old, there's still a part of you that takes it with a grain of salt. You're like, okay, they might just be hungry, or okay, maybe they just need more food. Um, this, in a sense, is what's happening, I think, with a lot of young adults in their relationship with their parents. But the child in the dynamic is the parent, and the parent is saying things that are outlandish, emotionally not controlled, and they're digging scars into their kids because they're not really emotionally mature parents. So in a situation like that, where it's emotionally abusive or you're unable to escape and it's really just damaging and there's no investment towards positive progress in relationships, that boundary needs to be there both physically and emotionally. And a really helpful emotional boundary to use is to dumb them down to a 6-year-old. Not because you're just trying to humiliate them in your mind, but more so because that protects you. Just the same way it would if a kid were to tell you, "I hate you." So when you do that, it allows you to lovingly set boundaries like, "Hey, let's get you some food." The moment that a parent says something to you that's really, really hurtful. And then you set a practical boundary. How do I make sure that this person is not negatively impacting me or my loved ones? And then emotionally, the boundary is there. This person can no longer touch me emotionally because I'm taking what they say with not a grain of salt, but the whole bucket of salt.
I like that. Did you just think of that today?
I thought about that. So I use that analogy a lot with my clients, dealing with like a lot of emotionally immature parents.
Mm-hmm.
But when we decided that I would start this one, I was like, that might be a good way to start it because I think the question a lot of people are asking is, how do I navigate this boundary with a parent? You know, and that's usually what I go to first.
And like, I feel like to analyze your analysis, I feel like it's really about self-protection. But there's a difference between like protecting yourself, like with estrangement or no contact. Oftentimes, there's this false perception that people who are going no contact are doing so when they could really just grin and bear the unpleasantness. But there's a difference between regular suffering that comes with all relationships. You know, we all kind of can be selfish at times and not be on our game. But there's a difference between like a constant onslaught of unnecessary pain that someone's causing a relationship. And when you come to them and you try and rectify it and resolve it, they're either not acknowledging it's there or minimizing or invalidating your feelings. Ultimately, you kind of have to, you're at a crossroads when you attempt to resolve something like that. And you kind of go, well, I either have to find a way to just deal with this and tolerate it, or I don't have to accept this contract of suffering for the rest of my life. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Most people, if I were upset with you, most people would go, "Oh, okay, what did I do? How can I resolve this, and how can we move on?" But if you don't acknowledge that I'm frustrated with you, and you invalidate the reasoning behind it, then I'm kind of left dealing with an interpersonal problem by myself. And I think a lot of people who go no contact frequently find themselves in that situation where they're like, I can't resolve this, even though it requires another person to resolve it. So what am I supposed to do? You're kind of just left internalizing everything, developing chronic illness in the process.
Yeah, that's a chronic illness is, I think, a really big part of it because when you're dealing with emotionally immature parents or you're thinking about going no contact, it's helpful to think, is this person like a leech? Like not like a dog leech, but like a leech like sucking blood out of you, you know? Because like psychologically, we all learn based on experience, right? So if you're in an environment around supportive people that are lifting you up, that's going to make it likely that you're more confident. But if you're around someone, especially someone that really dictated your beliefs about life in early childhood, and they constantly are feeding you negativity and you're having to digest it, then you're at some point that's just going to negatively impact you. And so I think no contact is really important, because if that keeps happening and you get older, not only is that now negatively impacting you, but that's negatively impacting you and the people around you that you care about. That's negatively impacting your wife. And now that's negatively impacting your kids. And that's impacting your ability to perform at work, right? So if you don't have, if it gets to a point where you're noticing that there's no investment towards any positive progress, or they don't acknowledge what they did, like you said, then that's a really good reason to go no contact, I think.
Yeah, I mean, because you would agree with this, right? That like, especially with no contact estranged people, what they come to learn over time is that unresolved conflict just leads to becoming more angry internally with no outlet, really. Or if there is an outlet, it's not directed at the person who deserves it. It's directed at someone in their life that probably is a safe person that doesn't really benefit from being the whipping post. So it's like either it eats away at you from the inside, or you externalize it onto people you love and care about. But ultimately, unresolved conflict just leads to more anger for the person. And you know, like we mentioned the Oprah thing. So I didn't watch the episode, but I saw like clips. I mean, I get it. I understand what.
I didn't watch it either. I just asked Chad about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. People are like, okay, I'm tuning out now. These people don't know what they're talking about.
But she calls it a trend, and I'm sure she's being picked apart. But she calls it a trend, and it's a trend in the same way. Like, so. Well, was it Oprah who called it? Well, was it Oprah or someone on Oprah's show called going no contact a trend? And it's a trend in the same way we discovered asbestos is bad, so we started taking it out of schools and hospitals and homes because it was harming us. If that's a trend, well, then this is exactly like that. It's a response to a generation of people finally saying enough is enough. And I think the only reason it's happening more now is because a lot of the problem comes from the boomer generation. Like the people who are going no contact are often the children of boomers. And if you go back as early as 1976, this generation of people were called the generation of me because they were so self-centered and self-absorbed. And so when these self-absorbed people have kids and those kids develop a sense of financial independence because now they're adults, now they have the agency to actually distance themselves from these people who were often being controlled by the financial dependence they had when they were younger. And so all this mass of people are now having this exodus, and it's being called a trend. But ultimately, it's a response to a group of people who are unwilling to take accountability.
Wow. Dude, you just preached. That was good. And you gave like a history lesson in there. Like it's so true. Like like going no contact, it kind of can be a trend, but trends are good.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like it's like whenever there was
eating healthy is a trend.
Yeah. New Year's resolutions, they're great in that way. People have dealt with all sorts of racism, and there's been trends with protests. Like a trend is just basically an agreed upon identification of like, ooh, good. We should all do this, you know, like, and this is sort of, I think, that identification and that example, right, of like different generations, how they were perceived at a time in the past and now how they're perceived in the present. That's perfectly said, I think. I agree.
Your word identification I really like, because it's like it's just a noticing. Like you're like, oh, all of the dots now are starting to connect when I look at this from a zoomed out point of view. And oftentimes, you know, when I think there are a lot of people who go no contact because they are just sick of being mistreated. I also think there's a lot of people who go no contact even though they're okay with being mistreated. When they have kids, that's where they draw the line of like, I'm no longer okay with you mistreating this. Like, you can treat me poorly, which I would argue, like, come to therapy if you think that's okay. But but when I see it happening to my kid, that's really when it puts into perspective how I need to separate from this stuff. And I think that's like a reasonable thing. And wouldn't you agree that everything we've learned about mental health and psychology in our training tells us that when you don't feel like you can escape something bad, that really messes with your mental health.
Mhm. Oh yeah, I agree 100% with the parenting thing. Like I think parents, when people have kids, sometimes that's when they become the most psychologically healthy because we project our needs onto our kids. And so you will take a lot of crap and a lot of people walking over your boundaries, but the moment somebody does something to your kid, that's when you say, well, I can't let this happen to this defenseless person. So you're forced into that state of assertiveness to set boundaries. All of a sudden, you finally have needs, even though you've been the most invisible person in the room. So I do find that to be helpful with kids, and it helps with this whole thing about no contact, because a lot of people, once they have kids, then they're willing to go no contact. A lot of people, when they have kids, are willing to be more of a protective force in their life and to set boundaries. So kids can be stressful, but they can also be like, hey, get your life together because you care about me.
You ever hear of parts work?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like externalized parts work. It's like there's a part of when you said the word defenseless, I'm like, yeah, but there was a part of you that was defenseless that experienced it. But and in a lot of ways, like what parts work is at its core is recognizing that the you are now is still needing to resolve the defenseless you that was not protected then. And so when you have a kid, it's almost like, well, they're defenseless, so I can protect them. But it's like, yeah, you also need to do that internally with the part of you that wasn't defended. The lack of safety that you feel now comes from unresolved processing of a time when you were defenseless and really receiving harm.
Yeah, you're worth protecting too, and just because now that you're more capable, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be protected. You still need to realize that that kid exists inside of you, and there's a defenseless part of you that needs to own that. Yes, take care of yourself. You're worth it. But I also think about I want to go back to this too, but no contact, right? Like I want to just ask you flat out, how do you know it's right to go no contact?
That's a good question. That's a really. Did you have that? Did you have that prepared?
No, I thought about it like midway. I was like, oh, it'd be nice. Like when we're talking about no contact, like I think if you rewind like 2.5 minutes, my thought process was like, I was like, let me ask Vinny that at some
That's
point.
a good question. I feel like it's more about. So I think that when you're voluntarily participating in a relationship that is harming you, and you've tried to fix it, and it still hasn't been resolved, there's a part of you that has to, actually, this was a question. So I asked our Patreon subscribers, I was like, these are the 3 topics, give us questions. And so most of them were the attachment ones. So I'll go into my phone to read those when we do the episode. But there was one for this one, and someone was asking, how do you grieve in when you're no contact? Like, how do you go through that grief process of like grieving someone that's kind of still alive? But I think part of the answer to your question is, I'm doing such a roundabout answer, but the answer to your question is like, well, when someone's dead, there's nothing to resist. Like you can resist it on some level, but you have to acknowledge that they're no longer going to be alive, right? But when someone's alive, but the relationship is dead, to acknowledge and grieve that the relationship is dead requires you to stop resisting the reality of the alive relationship. You know what I mean? Like, of what you currently have in this relationship, there's a part of you that is resisting and obscuring the actual experience you're having. And it's kind of like a bad restaurant, or it's kind of like your favorite restaurant that slowly got worse and worse and worse, and now it makes you sick every time you go. The only thing that's keeping you from no longer going permanently is the part of you that is resisting reality. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like that's sort of like I just finished watching I'm getting into the movie references now. This is not a movie. Stranger Things.
Oh yeah.
Crap, I can't spoil it for everybody.
I've never seen it, so
Okay, I won't spoil
I
it.
kind of
I
am
won't
not
spoil
going to
it.
see it. I have made a mental decision.
Okay, but in the most vague way possible, there's this feeling at some point in the show of everything kind of coming to a turn, and people are moving on, and doing things with their lives, and you kind of just see that this growing up is kind of happening, and it feels kind of sad because it's like you can go back and you can try to play that video game that was nostalgic with your friends growing up. But when you go back and you play the game, you don't get the same dopamine hit because you're like, oh, well, I've played like PlayStation 4 games now. Or like you go back home and you try to play that game you played with the group of people you were with as kids, and it's just like, well, I got a kid now, I got and it's sort of like you have to grieve what was once there or perceived to be there. And it's hard to grieve that. And some people can hold on to nostalgia for a long time. But it makes me think a lot about people dealing with really, really difficult parents too, because you have to grieve that the maternal support that you want is not there.
You have to grieve. I feel like it's like this and sentence where you have to grieve that the relationship that I think is everyone's birthright, a secure relationship with your parents, is not possible, and the desire is not going to go away simply because you're aware it's not possible here. In the abstract, it's something that exists and it's observable amongst a lot of people, and the fact that you don't have that sucks, and becoming aware of that doesn't change your desire to have it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're always going to want the thing that really you deserve to have, but you just aren't going to get it. And I think in a lot of ways, you heal that wounds by understanding fully what the absence feels like. I've been really grappling with this concept, and it's really hard for me to verbalize, but it's like, you can't really grieve not having something until you can feel what it's like to not have it. And then, ironically or paradoxically, you start to know what it is. Like, oh, the safety and security that I've never had, the more unsafe I allow myself to feel, the more safe, the closer I actually get to feeling safe. It's this weird paradox that's hard to explain.
It makes sense though. Yeah, you have to allow the feelings to flow through you, but there's like a block if you never do that. And something else that I think keeps people really, really stuck, like I'm thinking about people, going back to that analogy at the beginning, people who are grieving the loss of their family because of going no contact, they can feel so much guilt. And I think guilt keeps people stuck when they're going no contact because they're constantly rethinking the narrative. Oh my gosh, I did this wrong. But that's really tied to your childhood experience where you put up with so much and you were never supposed to, but it feels like the new norm for you. So if the way that a lot of people I help cope with something like that is, how do you turn that narrative into reality if it's true that this person actually never really was what you anticipated that they would be in childhood? So for example, like if you have a narcissistic parent, and in childhood they would say so much stuff to guilt trip you, like, I can't believe that you're making your mother feel this way. You ruined our family, or you're tearing us apart. The moment that you actually start to set a boundary, as an adult in therapy that's trying to navigate that relationship, I would just tell them, I'm like, okay, in the middle of that argument, I want you to try something. I want you to say, hey, you want to go get a sandwich? Right after they tell you all the most awful possible things, because it sort of disarms them and makes them realize that you didn't touch me just now. And to a lot of people's surprise, they're like, okay, like it dismantles the narrative that the histrionic or narcissistic person is trying to create, that I'm actually in this emotional state, and it makes you realize that, wait, it was all just for control. It was never real. The narcissistic parent actually didn't feel those emotions that intensely. They were just pressing a button. And the moment I used the tool of distraction, wait, so my whole childhood I've thought that they actually felt this? They were faking it? Then they don't feel any guilt at all. Like, all right, I'm going no contact tonight, and they realize that consequences are the things that narcissists respond best to. And then they start to see the child now as this sort of this sort of place where they're always going to get penalized if they make the wrong move. You know,
That was so well said. Keep going. Keep going.
thanks. No, I think that's it. Yeah.
It's so well said, and I think you brought up a really good topic, which is the guilt. I 100% agree that it is a very common thing for people who go no contact, for them to feel a tremendous amount of guilt. And so I've always like wondered, why is that? And the answer that I always come to is, well, what kind of person is likely to go no contact? Someone who can't resolve conflict with someone. And so then why can't they resolve conflict? Well, because the other person can't take accountability for the role they're playing, right? So when someone can't take accountability for the role they're playing, what they do is they shift blame onto the other person. And so when you're very young and malleable, that blame shifting happens, and you're very fine taking on that sense of responsibility. And ultimately, at the root of guilt is this sense of responsibility that you're harming someone else. And so if you're conditioned into accepting responsibility from a very early age, then you're going to be feeling very guilty, even if you are making the right decision, because you feel responsible for everything that's happening in your external world. And you know, you've never seen this movie, but I think it's a perfect allegory for narcissistic abuse and overcoming it, which is The Truman Show. And I'll remind you, it's a movie about a guy who was born on a TV set, this like large islands where they film every minute of his day, right? And throughout the movie, he gradually starts to realize that his entire world is contrived. And similarly to what you're saying, you gradually start to realize that all the things that are being told to you are not rooted in a sense of reality. They're rooted in a sense of functionality. It's like, I'm trying to get you to do this thing. I'm trying to manipulate you. I want you to marry this person and not that person. And because of that, I'm going to modify your world around you. And this story is about him. He had this authentic moment for a brief moment with this woman in high school. And you could tell he felt something that he didn't feel his entire life, which is authentic connection, which is not something you can do with someone who's narcissistic, right? So he spends his whole movie obsessing over this moment because it's the only sense of authenticity he's ever had. And ultimately, his desire to escape is met with like harsh barriers for him to overcome. But ultimately, he was willing to die in order to experience that sense of authenticity again. And I think in a lot of ways, someone who's no contact, especially someone who's no contact without any pretense of like, don't talk to my kids that way, just someone who made the choice by themselves, they're willing to die for that sense of safety that they never had and that sense of authenticity that was never afforded to them growing up. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So if you're trying to leave a narcissist, watch The Truman Show.
Yes.
That's what it feels like. Or if you want to know what it feels like,
yes,
then watch that.
Because there's literally,
that makes so much sense.
There's literally a guy in the sky. He's in like the top of the dome. He's like the executive producer named Christoph. And he's literally controlling the weather to try and get this guy. He manufactured, and this is also another thing, he manufactured a phobia of the ocean by having his dad die in a sailing accident just to keep him from ever escaping. And ultimately, I think, you know, going no contact at its core is an escape from this false pretense that you're stuck. You know, I wrote down a list of like things that people say to you when they don't agree with going no contact. Are you ready?
Nice. Let's.
Stop holding a grudge. Thoughts?
That makes a lot of sense because you're the problem in that equation. You're holding a grudge.
The blame shifting.
Let go. Yeah.
So we're making it a virtue to let conflict go unresolved, and I'm basically going to play chicken with you. And the longer you hold on to this frustration that I'm not going to notice, is the longer you're going to start looking kind of like the bad guy, because even though I maybe started the offense, which I won't acknowledge, you're the one who is not resolving this by moving on. But the irony is moving on in their world means not acknowledging the harm and letting me perpetuate whatever act I won't acknowledge.
Mm-hmm. And this is why a lot of kids that have to go no contact really have so much shame because everything's their fault.
What's wrong with you?
Like everything, it literally is your fault.
I'm gonna throw another one at you. Ready?
Go. I want to. So you're gonna go through each one as a list, or you're gonna do one at a time?
I don't know. I have no
I'm
plans.
down. Are you gonna throw them at me randomly?
Yeah.
I love it.
Hey,
Go for it.
they're family.
How could you? This is our family. You're tearing us apart.
What's your answer to that?
Okay, say it again. I'll do it.
So like, you can't go no contacts. This is your family.
I just disappear. Or yeah, you want to get a sandwich? No, that's a there's not a lot of places you can really go with that because it's like it just goes straight for like
The jugular.
the jugular. It's like it's your fault. You're destroying our family. It's like some people will say things in an argument, and your first thought is like, I don't know where to start to break
so
down their logic because they're so wrong. And to even engage in it, you have to lose your reality testing to go deep into how they got there to pull them out. So you kind of have to become a little bit more dumb to help them become undumb, but then they'll punch you while you're down there. You know, it's like to say to someone who's trying to go no contact is like arguing with parents you want to go no contact with is so hard because you gotta demean yourself to even argue with them.
That's true. I mean, and I think a lot of times people go no contact when they're done lowering themselves in that way, when they're done kind of arguing against a narrative that isn't true to begin with. And like my response to the it's your family thing is like, I think the argument that you can't go no contact because you shouldn't leave your family is rooted in this concept of loyalty that I don't agree with. I often, have you ever noticed that? I think loyalty is a great virtue, but I often find that the only people who are espousing that virtue are using it in a way to control others to accept mistreatment they otherwise wouldn't accept. You know what I mean? Like, oh, so you want me to be loyal to a fault because it's family, but at the same time, that means I open the door to just unconditional mistreatment. That doesn't seem fair. I don't feel like I'm winning on that bargain.
That's a incredible point because I think that's what especially narcissists do, because a lot of narcissists are some of the people you have to go no contact with. And narcissists, they take whatever is precious in the world and use that as a weapon. So it gives the Bible a bad rep. Ooh, Bible. Okay, let me find the one verse that makes my child that doesn't have the software to really autocorrect all the problems I'm saying to use that scripture against them. Oh, loyalty to family. We're blood, you know, like you going against family, like it's going for the one most precious thing, and it's making you feel like you're going against that to keep you stuck. And the worst part of this all is you're suffering. And the second worst thing is that now these really beautiful things about life are becoming negatively associated with power, dominance, and control in a really bad way. Now people freak out when they see a Bible because of all the awful things that have happened with it, or people freak out when people can be so bonded in a community because there's like cults in the world and things like that, right? So it really sucks that you have to, and the real sad part is that going no contact, you have to have all this stuff thrown in your face as if it's true. You have to feel temporarily like someone who hates like things that are worthy to be cherished. You have to be the child that you're Satan himself, or you're all these awful things to reach health. It's just like the Truman Show, but you get all these negative things thrown at you for the sake of escape, you know?
That's so well said. And you hit on a point that I wanted to get to anyway, which is I think a common misconception of people who go no contact is they're not family oriented. I would argue that a vast majority of these people are very family oriented. They were just born in the wrong family. You know, like a lot of people who go no contact because they truly understand what a loving and supportive family looks like, and they come to terms with the fact that they're not in one. And you know, there's a great line from Kingpin that you've never seen, that is a perfect antidote when someone uses the Bible of like honor your mother and father or whatever. You're not honoring family when you go no contact. And it is he's like, what did the Bible say about what did the Bible say about judging? And he's like, I think they're against it. They're against it. They're against judging. So don't judge me.
You can't judge me as negative or positive.
But it is kind of a litmus test when you when people say, hey, I'm no contact. I think oftentimes the people they share that with, how someone responds is really a litmus test of their own trials and tribulations or lack thereof. Some people get very uncomfortable and start defending a family that they don't even know who they are. In contrast to the person in front of them who's like, no, I did it for a reason.
Right. Yeah. You start to fall for that, and then you start to you start to assume the identity of what your family wanted you to, and then you get all the negative consequences for it, you know.
What's your response to I mean, I guess you kind of answered it, but what's your response to someone who says, it says right in there, honor your mother and father?
I would say this is a really good one for me, but honoring, what does it mean to honor someone? To honor someone, does that mean that you put up with all of their crap and you let them go down a path of destruction or lead you down a path of destruction? No, I think honoring a parent, I don't know the exact specific like breakdown of that word honoring, but what my gut tells me that it looks more like I'm still going to show you love and respect in some way, and I'll do that in a way that allows me to still make the healthy choice. Okay, I'm going to seat you at the head of the table, and I'm going to allow you to sit on whatever throne you feel comfortable. And I'm going to look at you as someone who's a child that probably was in a tough family of their own, or who knows, whatever narrative is actually true and I believe to be true, that allows me to see this person in the most loving way possible while also protecting me and them. I think that's what it looks like to honor. I think to dishonor is sort of like to, needlessly throw punches as you set those boundaries. But I don't think that's needed. I think the only time it's needed is if they're just constantly pushing you and grabbing you, right? Like if someone's pushing you off a cliff, hopefully you punch them in the face, right? Like I'm still honoring you at this point. I need to survive.
I'm honoring you.
It's a fist of justice.
I think that's really well said though, because I think the most ideal ends to the process of going no contact, or I think the ideal goal in the positive sense is what distance do you have to get to before you can sit from a place of no longer harming them, because ultimately you're basically like a planet trying to find its natural orbital distance from the sun. And if it means, never coming into contact with it, then that's kind of, and also, you kind of made a point too of like, a lot of times no contact comes from generational trauma. The only issue is the generation above you never took the necessary steps. And oftentimes, I think there's a type of mentality, especially I think amongst boomers, where they think that because I got my licks, you're going to get your licks too. Because I was treated like an object, you're going to be treated like an object. And there's actually, sorry again, there's a movie called Dazed and Confused, where it's basically like the last day of high school or something, and the upcoming seniors. It's like a tradition where they basically like paddle the butts of incoming freshmen. They're like kind of terrorizing them, and there's some of the seniors who are like excited to do it. Like Ben Affleck's character is an asshole in this movie. He's like, I can't wait to beat the shit out of these kids. But then there's this other guy who's actually like really empathetic and caring, and he's like, I don't want to do this, like I'm just playing along, but I'm going to protect you. And I think what kind of person your parent is determines who's breaking the generational trauma. And oftentimes we get a lot of Ben Afflecks, and we have to be the ones that go, okay, I didn't like getting smacked in the butt, and I'm not going to do that to the next generation.
That inherent desire to, I want to reverse this curse versus I suffered, so you deserve the pain that I got. Like that's the difference.
It happened to me. It's like, well, if it happened to you, why would you want it to happen to me?
It's like, yeah, some people just naturally want justice of like, I want this to happen to the people below me. But it's like, it's interesting to think what explains that change. You know, what makes some people want it to not.
I think you're born with it. I think it's a faculty. It's like empathy. You know, if you have enough empathy, I think you just don't want to harm others in the way you were harmed. And if you don't have enough empathy, you're kind of looking for retribution. I had another thought. No, I lost it.
What else is on that list?
So can I ask and answer this one?
Mm-hmm. I can ask you, or I can't see it.
I think that there's a common phrase, and this doesn't just apply to estrangement and no contact, but also just like people who can't take accountability. It's like, you know, life's too short. It's like, yeah, life is too short. That's why I no longer want to expose myself to this bullshit.
That's good. No, good answer.
So asked and answered in legal speak.
Asked and what is that?
It's there's like certain phrases you use in a courtroom, and it's based on my watching of My Cousin Vinny over and over. There's like asked and answered. There's that's kind of the only one I can remember. There's more.
I'm lost.
My Cousin Vinny is a great movie with my name in it, so that's good.
That's where I got lost. Well, here's something else interesting. When I think about going no contact, I had to go no contact with my dog, Arya. Because when we first got her, she needed to stay inside of her kennel because it just wasn't safe for her, because she would run around, pee everywhere. I guess
normal.
That's not unsafe, I guess, but unsafe for me because I didn't like that.
People are going to criticize you for trivializing a sensitive subject.
Yes, no, but it connects. Here's why. Because with my dog, like, I felt like a strange, like, emotional connection, like when it was really little. Like, I didn't want it to be alone. And it was barking and yelping for connection. Like, it had no connection, and it only knew me and my wife. And I could have just gone to sleep in my room, but it was barking. And so I literally made like a little bed for myself next to its cage and slept next to it the whole night.
That's
because
sweet.
I didn't want to leave it, and I felt emotionally attached. And I just wanted to toss in my faith into all of this, because I think when I think about going no contact, my heart at its purest form looks like that. You have something inside of you that can't exist in my sphere, but I desperately want just that inner child inside of you to be able to exist with me. But I also don't feel any guilt because of my decision. Maybe I felt a little guilt with the dog in that example. But ideally, when it comes to the people most important to me, if I ever have to go no contact, I'm walking away with, you are just kicked out of Eden. And it's unfortunate, but the way you exist right now can't be. So this boundary is not me looking at you and thinking the worst of you, but more so thinking, I want the best for you, and it can't exist with me, you know?
That's really well said. And I do think there's a big spiritual component to people going no contact. You don't go no contact. I mean, people go no contact to eliminate the unpleasantness in their life, but there is an inherent aspirational leap of faith that comes with doing this very unfamiliar thing that you've never done before. That's terrifying. You don't know what the other side of this looks like. There might be loneliness. You might feel an intense amount of guilt. You're likely to feel an intense amount of guilt. But I think in a lot of ways, the kind of spiritual crucifixion that happens is allowing the guilt to happen without letting it mean something more about who you are as a person, you know? And it's a very hard needle to thread when you're feeling like a piece of shit all the time, but intellectually know that's not the case. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Intellectually, the narrative you paint has to be healthy, because if it's not, then you could go down a really dark path. So yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Any last thoughts on this? 1 minute.
Last words. My usual is like, stay in school, don't do drugs, just do the right ones.
And mine is do drugs and drop out of school.
That's all I got.
Yeah,
all right,
let's
tune
end
in
there.
to the next one. Leave comments.
Join our Patreon.
That was cool.
That was good. Can we release that one first?
Yeah.
Okay.